23 seconds out. Guidance is internal. We'll start the countdown in 10 seconds. Brake check. Light check. Light check.
Houston, copy check, Houston.
Clear. Good luck out there. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Launch to go. Lift off to the Polestar 2.
On the spec sheet, this thing might look like your average saloon car. It's only got 50 kilowatt hour charging, you know, it's a 4-door, lots of space. It's got that crossover stylings that's definitely cooler than what most companies are doing, but we both know North Americans are gonna go wild for it. But once you get in it, it is so much more than that. It's fun to drive, it's really cool. It's got an awesome Android infotainment system. So if you wanna learn about it, I don't know. I only have time for this one more take. We're gonna learn. This is the Polestar 2! Well, not many people know of Polestar. The brand began as Volvo's performance arm before being more recently spun off into its own high-end EV manufacturer. The Polestar 2 that I'm sitting in has been the flagship car so far, and while I'm driving a performance package trim from 2021, the 2022 trim is out now and there are a few more motor configurations and it has a slightly longer range. But as far as I can gather, those are the major changes, so everything else I talk about will apply mostly to both cars. I was also able to get this review unit thanks to a fun partnership with the car rental app Turo. But before I get into that and how I feel about Android Automotive, the backbone to the infotainment in this car, let's talk about what it's like to drive this machine. Stepping into the Polestar 2, it's a weird mix of sportiness and electricness that I haven't really seen since I got to sit in a Mustang Mach-E a few years ago. This is by no means a bad thing because the car handles more like a sports car than a traditional gas-guzzling crossover that you'd come to expect, with a lot of weight and not a lot of engine to push it around. This one is very snappy with great acceleration. It's a little weird having like the ride height of a crossover with all of this sports car acceleration, but you get used to it pretty quick, and I actually kind of like it now that I'm used to it. Once you slam your foot down on the accelerator though, you can tell that this is a sports car, not a family crossover. Its 0 to 100 time will range between 7 seconds to I think 4.5, depending on what trim you have. I've got the faster one here, and while it's not nearly as fast as the Porsche Taycan that I was, screaming around Toronto in a few months ago, it is still super fun, and that instant torque makes me feel like I'm the fastest car on the road and nobody can keep up with me, even though in this one, I'm sure a few people could. On the con side of things, there aren't many, but the suspension's a little stiff for my liking. I generally like things to be a little smoother, a little more comfortable. I don't know, maybe I'm a baby, but this has got a bit of a stiffer suspension, at least in this performance model. And while some people, maybe like all-wheel drive sports car, Subaru drivers, or somebody that wants a bit of that stiffer road feel, a bit more race feel, will enjoy this, it's something to take account of if you're not really looking for that, I guess. It's not terrible. I mean, at no point is this a bad ride. It's just something to be aware of because, stiff suspension isn't exactly the best. When I was driving it, the car also felt like it was kept going really straight and really true, sometimes with my older Jetta, and I know this is a pretty terrible comparison, but the wheels get misaligned and the weights change and the cars start to pull left or right a little bit, and in the Polestar, it just felt so dialed in. It felt perfect, like the left and the right was not there. It was just straight, it was true, and combining that with the lane keeping assist and adaptive cruise control, it felt like this car was very capable. I mean, it's not driving itself, but it's taking a little bit of the pressure off you, and that adds to like a much more pleasing and a much more relaxing driver experience than I think you might be used to if you're coming from a much older vehicle. For the lane keeping assist, it's pretty subtle. You got to keep your hands on the wheel, but if you bump towards the left or right lines, it will give you a little buzz just to let you know, hey, pay attention. If you start to veer too much, it'll beep a bit, but I found that buzz was enough to make me snap back to attention and just straighten up any time that it started to go a little off course. Overall, I found that the car did a really nice job of just pushing its own weight around, and even though it's like 2 tons, the torque was snappy and the brakes were responsive, and it's pretty smooth on the acceleration when you want it to be. It'll shoot you back in the seat other times like this. Whoa, sorry, bad idea. Either way, but you kind of get the point. It's an electric car. It's a great driving experience. I wouldn't complain about a thing, and I honestly would buy this car. I have no real complaints about driving it. It's great. Oh, and the range, I think I already said it, but you're looking at around high 300s to low 400s kilometer-wise in range. So if you're a techie like me, I think the real draw here is the Android Automotive infotainment system backbone. While it doesn't immediately solve all of the problems I have with in-car software, the Polestar implementation is probably my favorite infotainment in any car I've ever been in. To take full advantage of it, you can sign into your Google account, and then you can access Google Maps, Google Assistant, YouTube Music. I mean, you can access those things without them, but then they're personalized to you like you would on your Google Nest devices at home or your phone. It really makes that car reach its full potential. It's all I've wanted for a car in the last 10 years without knowing it, and it's beautiful. These big squares, they do look a little large at first, but once you start using them, they do provide good context as to what's behind them. And whatever square is showing your media also has playback control. So you play, skip, you can search for gas stations or charging stations here. It's all laid out pretty well. It's designed, smart, and it looks aesthetically pleasing, at least on the main page. The other drawback with Android Auto is that you can't run Apple CarPlay with a Bluetooth connection. You can still make calls and play back songs really easily off, your iPhone through Bluetooth, but it's not exactly what people would be expecting coming from CarPlay or the traditional Android Auto that runs off your phone. That being said, with Google Maps and the Spotify app baked into the car, I didn't really miss it that much. I'll also say, people expecting this to be like a larger, better version of the existing phone-based Android Auto will be in for a bit of a shock. It's got a Polestar, design to it, and while Google Maps, Spotify, and other apps are good and better here, it's a bit harder to send texts, and you won't get notifications for your turn-by-turn navigation or what song is about to play anymore. That being said, I think it's a worthy trade-off just to be able to ask Google to turn on the seat warmers. Overall, the infotainment system handles the new age stuff a little bit better than old school stuff. So while my experience with Google Maps and Spotify was pretty seamless, controlling, fans and the radio were a little more convoluted than I would have wanted. Still doable, not super hard, but not as easy as Google Maps and Spotify. The other sort of dark side with this Android infotainment backbone is that you're probably going to start seeing it in a lot of cars from GM and Ford and other large manufacturers as they move to adopt it. I could see this upsetting quite a few iPhone users that are used to CarPlay. However, I don't really want to sit here and complain about Google Maps being built into a lot of cars because, like I said, that is awesome. Kind of. I will mention here that we had an issue where the GPS wasn't really tracking us for half a day, but I think that was just a glitch. Moving over to the second screen behind the driver's wheel is where the instrument cluster would be. So on the left-hand side is where it will show you your speed if you're in park or drive. Along the bottom here is where you're going to see if you have any driver assistance programs active. And then on the far side over there is your range and your power meter. And then the whole thing is taken up by a Google Maps. And this will show you your turn-by-turn directions as you're driving. Along the top is where you'll see some traditional car icons like, your fog lights and the parking brake and stuff like that. Since this is a screen, it also changes depending on what you're doing. So if you're charging the car, it will show some charging information. And if the car is just sitting idle and you hop in, it will just quickly show you your estimated range and how much battery you have left. Overall, I find it super easy to use and very easy to read as well, which is nice in a car. The rest of the interior model I was driving was made of this really pleasant looking material. We've got like wood and nice chunky fabrics and this nice vegan material on the seats and these awesome yellow seat belts. And if you look up to this glass roof, there's even a reflection of the logo, a tiny one near the front. It's these tiny touches that really give it this premium feel and this premium look that I think helps it compete with, Teslas and other high-end cars. It's just a really nice interior. I don't really have anything to complain about it. And did I mention these awesome yellow seatbelts? You've also got a decent amount of storage around the car for each passenger, which is nice to see. And most of the areas have lots of space, but they don't really pass the above average water bottle size test. The last two spaces to talk about with the interior are the front and rear trunks. The front trunk, which you saw me sitting in earlier, very small, not a lot going on up there, but some spare tire stuff. That being said, the back is quite large and even has a false bottom, so you can pack away even more stuff underneath it. Once you get around to the outside of the car, you can see its stunning Scandinavian design. The CEO of Polestar, Thomas Ingelath, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, was the VP of design of Volvo, so I'm really glad the Geely Group gave him his own brand because the overall look and just the tiny details of this Polestar are phenomenal. I mean, if you look closely at the headlights or the taillights, notice tiny little logos within them, and if you have the performance upgrade, you get yellow little dust valves on the wheels that just look awesome. I mean, it's super cool. They're tiny, fine details, but I don't think you get things like this from Tesla or even legacy brands like Volkswagen or GM. And even with all those tiny details, the car still has this really pleasing minimalist look. So taking a step back so you can kind of take in the whole car, you can see this awesome fastback design. It's got this sort of boxy-ish shape that to me looks like a futuristic version of a muscle car rather than the curvy lines you'd see on a Tesla or what Volkswagen is doing with its ID series. Another oddity for this electric car is it has a front grille. Polestar currently houses some of its driver assistance goods in there, but realistically, I think it's just for looks. And you know what, I guess that's okay because it kind of looks cool, and I think the people I showed it to liked it more than that flat front on a Tesla. I'd also be remiss not to mention these sweet frameless mirrors, which, I don't know, don't add a lot when you hear about them, but when you're driving, they look awesome. They just look like they're floating out there, and even the center mirror, look through the back window is frameless, and it's a really nice design. Without me waxing on too much more, I'll just mention that all the panels seem well aligned with consistently close gapping all around the vehicle. You know, the fit and finish is really nice on this 2-ton monster, so in terms of build quality, I think it's probably going to be crushing most Teslas that are coming off the factory line. The other thing that I want to mention is that it only has a single CSS charging port on the back quarter of the car. This is probably the same spot as where the gas tank is in your current gas car, but I kind of liked it when I had the Porsche and the plug-in was right up here in the front. It was, it was just cool, felt new, and it's an electric car. I'm looking for newness. It's not that big a deal. What's, a bit more of a pain about charging is that in terms of fast charging, this car only goes up to 50 kilowatts an hour. Well, this does make finding those elusive fast chargers a bit easier than the 150 to 250 kilowatt hours that I was looking for when I had the Porsche. It does take a little longer to top up. So with a charge from 15 to 90% taking me about an hour. This isn't the end of the world, but it's just not the fastest charge out there, and there's not as many chargers as there would be for a Tesla. That said, once you do get it to 90%, you get around 360 to 390 kilometers of range. Although you can push it to that full, 100% of battery to get a little closer to 400 kilometers of range. However, I'd save that for special trips since Polestar recommends that you only charge to 90% to help retain the battery. You can set the car to stop charging at 90 on the inside display, so it's pretty easy. I guess even with fast chargers being a little easier to find, it's still not easy to charge compared to getting a tank of gas. In my time with the car, I've had a few chargers be broken, I've had to go to different ones, and charging at home is still slow. It works for you if you can do it overnight, but charging is still a year or two away, unfortunately, I think. Before I get into my conclusion, I just want to say the reason I was able to demo this car was because the car rental at Turo reached out and offered it as long as I did a little bit of talking about what it was like to use the service. That seemed fine to me, good trade-off, and basically the service was as you'd expect. The app was pretty seamless, even if there was a lot of info packed into such a small space, and the driver I rented from also seemed to like the service and was finding it helpful to find, a little bit of extra revenue to help pay for the monthly cost of the Polestar. That being said, this isn't the cheapest rental service around, but you are getting a cool car. From Friday morning to Sunday afternoon, this was a little over $600 plus a $1,500 hold on my credit card. Still, you get to rent some of the coolest cars, and there are other cars that you can rent for much less. So if you want something, a little bit luxury, or maybe a Tesla, or a car you just want to demo before you buy it, you can do that. And Turo makes it pretty easy. They take care of the insurance and the rentals, as well as if you wanted to put your own car on there, you can do that too, and they make it fairly easy. So if you have a desirable car and you're not using it that often, you could list it on Turo and make some side cash. Overall, it seems like a fine service, and I'd expect most car owners and renters to be fine. But as with all online platforms, I'm sure there will be the odd horror story. It's like Airbnb. I'm sure most people here have done an Airbnb, but I'm sure everybody knows somebody that has that one weird Airbnb story. I've already said so much about this car, so I'm gonna cut right to the chase. Well, it's fairly well priced against its competitors like Tesla. It starts for around $50,000 in Canada, so it's a little out of reach for most people. I believe the model I'm sitting in even goes for closer to $75,000 Canadian because it's fully loaded. I guess on top of that, I wish the suspension had a little more give and the battery could accept maybe a bit of a faster charging speed, but there's no real denying that it's a fantastic little electric crossover with a lot of personality and a very sporty soul. And anyone who's really into Tesla, or really, I guess, not into Tesla and wants a high-end EV, this could be a better option than even the Volvo XC40, which shares a lot of similarities with the Polestar. You know, same battery, same Android infotainment. Either way, this is a great little EV. One thing I did notice that I kind of should mention, I guess, is, well, Teslas, there's a big group of people online that own Teslas and people hate on them, but at least they're there. So you can go into message boards and forums, and if you have an issue, lots of other people will be having that issue, and you can, chat about these things online. When I reviewed the Porsche, I found a little bit of that was, available too, and some people were chatting online, but still not anywhere near a Tesla. And with the Polestar, I don't know. I was struggling to find like chat rooms and forum posts about people with issues with the Polestar, which I guess is a good thing. But if you're looking for that EV community aspect, you're not going to get it with the Polestar in the same way you would with the Tesla, unfortunately. Anyway, I'm Brad Bennett. You can reach out to me online at any time at the BradFad. If you have any questions for me, feel free to reach out. And follow MobileSyrup too at MobileSyrup, or check us out over on MobileSyrup.com for all kinds of other great tech news. Thanks for watching.